All of us probably know all the Jewish holidays, or so we think. Today is 15th day of month Av, which is called Tu B'Av. It's another Jewish holiday. And probably some of us never heard of this holiday. 15th of Av, Tu B'Av. What is it about? And why is it called Tu B'Av? So first of all, Jewish math is a little bit different from what we used to. And Jewish numbers are actually Hebrew letters. So for example, Aleph is letter number 1. So when we want to write 1, we just write Aleph. When we want to write 15, we write letter Tes, which is 9. It's the 9th letter in the Hebrew alphabet. And we write letter Vav, which is 6. So 9 plus 6 is 15. So Tes and Vav together make 15. And Tes and Vav is pronounced Tu. So hence Tu B'Av. So what is this holiday about? If you go to sources, Talmud brings at least 3 reasons for today's celebration. But we will not have time to talk about all 6 of them. I will talk about one. And the one that Talmud emphasizes is today is the day where intermarriage was allowed. Wow. Did I hear it right? Intermarriage? Yes, but not intermarriage that you think. It's intermarriage between the tribes. You know, we have 12 tribes, and before Jewish people entered the land of Israel, the land was divided between among every tribe based on their population, based that it should be fair, it should be based on the valleys and the mountains and natural resources, and of course water supply. So all the land of Israel was divided among 12 tribes. But each tribe, they have their own land, and what happens when a boy, for example, from a tribe of Judah, is marrying a girl from a tribe of, let's say, Benjamin, tribe of Binyamin. If this girl doesn't have any brothers, and when her parents die, she will inherit the land, and the land is in a tribe of Binyamin. But if she is married and her husband is from a tribe of Yehuda, tribe of Judah, when her parents die and she inherits the land from Binyamin, her husband automatically inherits her land. And therefore, the little portion of tribe of Binyamin will be transferred to tribe of Yehuda. And Torah says specifically that all the borders between the Shvotim, between the tribes, should stay the same. The land should belong to that tribe. And therefore, as you can imagine, there were situations that the girl could not or would have a hard time to get married because the market, so to say, is very small. She can only marry within her tribe. And sometimes the tribe is very small and it could present a problem. So when rabbis saw that it creates a problem, they went back to books and they looked very closely, and they saw that this law was actually applied only to that generation which entered the land of Israel, only to that first generation. After that, Torah wasn't very particular how the borders were divided as long as we all stay within the same land. And therefore, on 15th of Av, rabbis declare, from now on, intermarriage is allowed. You can marry to any tribe you want. And if you can imagine, it created a great simcha, a great happiness. Talmud describes in detail the happiness that was on that day, how the girls would go out of Jerusalem in the fields and the valleys and in the vineyards, they were dancing, and shidduchim were created. People were dating each other. It was a great, great simcha. So today, if you wish, it's like a Jewish Valentine. It's celebration of our marriages. And it's an opportunity to tell to your spouse, to your wife, or to your husband, thank you for being by my side. Thank you for being my husband or being my wife. Thank you for trusting me, for loving me, for being devoted to me, for inspiring me, for making me a better person. And you know what? What we taught in school sometimes is wrong. We were taught in math that 1 plus 1 is 2. It's not true. 1 plus 1 is much bigger than 2. When two people get together, they create something which is much bigger than sum of each party. 1 plus 1 creates enormous amount, much bigger than 2. And that's what marriage is about. Some people say marriage is 50-50. I say no, divorce is 50-50. When you get divorced, unfortunately, that's when you divide 50-50. Marriage is 100% and 100%. Each party contributes 100%. That's what Tu B'Av is about, celebrating our Jewish marriages. But this is not all. And before I continue, before we will go into the deeper dimension of Tu B'Av, I'll tell you a Russian joke. You know, in 1917, as you know, there was a Russian Revolution. The Communist Party won, and they wanted to instill these communist ideas among the population. And the hardest people were farmers. It's hard to convince me to give up my chicken or my cow for a greater good. So what they did after they closed down and destroyed all the synagogues and churches, they realized people need a place to congregate, to celebrate, to socialize, to have concerts and dancing and lectures and movies. So instead of those synagogues and churches that partially were that center for communities, Russians opened community centers called klub, like a club. Community centers where people get together. So every month they would send from the big cities lecturers, activists to talk about Communist Party, to convince local villagers to buy into the idea and finally to give up your chicken or cow. And they were not very successful, as you can guess. So one time they put an advertisement in a local community center that this Sunday a lecturer from a big city is coming and there will be a lecture on love and relationships. Wow. Who doesn't want to go and listen about love and relationships? So if you can imagine, the place was packed. Place was packed till the ceiling. And the communist leader comes from big city and he sees the place is packed. And he starts and he says, the love relationships, it's a very important topic. And the love between husband and wife, between man and woman, we all know about that. We have families. But the love between a person and a Communist Party, this is something that needs further discussion. And he started talking about the Communist Party. So now, once I told you about love and relationships between people, I can now proceed and talk about another love and relationship between Jewish people and Hashem, between Jewish people and God. It's another dimension in Tu B'Av, sorry. So, Tu B'Av is 40 days before the creation of the world. Interesting. So what? Now, 40 is an interesting number. If you remember, how many days Moshe was up on Mount Sinai receiving the Torah? 40 days. How many years Jewish people traveled in desert? 40 years. What does Talmud says about turning 40 years old? Talmud says 30 is strength. 40 is wisdom. Wisdom, it's not just a knowledge, not just accumulation of a knowledge. It's life experience. It's ability to analyze that knowledge and understand something and give right advice, make right decision. Wisdom cannot be speed up. We can have a child a genius in 6 years old. He'll be smart, but he won't be wise. There's no shortcut to wisdom. So Talmud says it requires at least 40 years to become wise. So you see, 40, it's a cycle of completion. It's a cycle of formation. Now back to the world. We know that Rosh Hashanah is on the 1st of Tishrei. That's what we celebrate, Rosh Hashanah, New Year. But actually, 1st of Tishrei is the creation of a man, which was on the 6th day of creation. The first day we know God created heaven and earth, and first day was light, let it be light, right? Only on the 6th day, God proclaimed, let us make a man. On the 6th day, which is 1st of Tishrei. So what happened 6 days before? It was 25th day of the month of Elul. On the 25th day of the month of Elul, actual physical world was created, was formed. Why the world was created? Not to save the oceans and whales and not to recycle. The world was created for us, for people. We're central figure of the world. And then we need to recycle and save the whales, but for us, for people. So on the 25th day of month of Elul, the world was formed. But following the logic, what I just explained, that 40 days, Talmud says, before creation, 40 days before creation, Talmud says, a heavenly voice proclaims that this baby is destined to this baby. This girl is destined to this girl. Why 40? Because 40 is completion. So before a baby is formed and completed, there was something special happening, which we call bashert, predestiny. The heavenly voice proclaims 40 days before that this baby will be predestined to this baby. And when we are born, we don't remember, we don't know who is our bashert, but we try to find our bashert. But it happens 40 days before. So by the same token, 40 days before the world is created, the heavenly voice said, this nation is predestined for this world. This nation is betrothed to its creator. We explain our relationship between Jewish people and God as a marriage, as bashert. Before the world even was created, it was predestined. The Jewish people will be chosen people, will lead by example and be the light unto nations to the rest of the world, to the rest of people. So, our bashert, our marriage to God, is predestined and it's forever. So while today we celebrate our marriages and we thank our spouses and we tell them thank you for making me much bigger, much greater than I could ever achieve alone, it's also an opportunity to thank Hashem and thank Him and say thank you for choosing us. Thank you for giving 100% into this relationship. And we historically proved that we also give 100% by fulfilling the mitzvahs, by going through so many hardship and staying loyal. And God promised that 100% will be returned. And we see it in our days, how the Jewish land is rebuilt, how more and more people are coming back to Torah, to Jewish observance. And while we thank our spouses, it's also a time to thank Hashem for making us great nation, for making us better people through His Torah.